Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics, brought to you by Sketch.com. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week's guest writes about comics for varying sites, including the AV Club, Polygon, and Vulture. It's Oliver Sava. Thanks for coming on, Oliver.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you doing?
I'm good. Excited to talk about superheroes.
Oh,
for the,
yeah.
Fifth year in a row?
I don't even know. I mean, time means nothing anymore. It's been a lot of years. Actually, I was curious. Do you write about comics for Vulture, or do you do TV stuff there?
Mostly TV stuff, but I did a little bit of old guard stuff for them. And no, my WandaVision piece was a comic-centric piece, and that was talking about kind of the history of shitty marriages in comics. So kind of it was
such a robust subject.
Yeah, basically once you get married in comics, that's when your life is about to take a cataclysmic turn where it's like somebody's going to die, or like maybe you'll destroy the universe, who knows.
Or you'll literally make a deal with the devil.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's when bad stuff happens. So, but yeah, mostly TV, but it's also a lot of comics adjacent TV. So like I recapped Invincible, which was so good.
Yeah,
Invincible
was awesome.
was a lot of fun. And it's like, I don't know. I balk at violence, but at the same time, I'm also like, yay, violence. Well, it's just like, because Marvel's so popular and their violence is so kind of pulled back.
Right.
It's fun when it really, really goes all out. And Invincible's animated, so it makes it a lot easier to watch. Like, heads explode and people punch through chests and stuff.
It is really interesting to watch something like that and then also compare that to like Marvel or DC or whatever. And I actually really like Marvel's movies and shows and everything like that. DC I'm kind of hit or miss with. But Invincible was really good. And I think it was at least in part, maybe in a different way than like The Boys, but I think it was similar in the sense that like they're kind of giving people a different flavor. And I mean, you know, we're going to be talking about superheroes all today. And I think that that's one of the things that really helps certain stories in this vein succeed, is if you give people a slightly different flavor that they're not used to. And Invincible was great because it was both super violent and also, I gotta say, I mean, did you read the comics before you watched the show?
Yes. So I read probably 75 issues consecutively, then would check in every so often because Kirkman would do that a lot, where it's like new direction.
Yeah.
So check in and be like, still don't like it. Not really interested. Don't like this either. But then towards the end, I think when Cory Walker came back, I started reading again and really dug it, actually.
The ending was really good. But I do want to say that I was amazed by how well the show nailed the I'd Still Have You beat. Everyone that read the comics knew that was coming. And somehow it still hit incredibly hard. I mean, it really helps when you have like the performers that you do. But at the same time, when I saw that, I was like, actually, like, I'm going to cover my face with my pillow to make sure that my wife doesn't see that I'm like getting emotional over here about a cartoon. But at the same time, that's what happened. Anyways, we can go on that forever. But, you know, the reason why we're here is this is the some number of times annual Superhero State of the Union, where Oliver and I talk about the state of the world of superhero comics, what's working for us, what isn't, and things we're excited about in general. And, you know, this is a Marvel and DC centric podcast, if only because they are the dominant superhero publishers. So Oliver, start us off. Marvel or DC? Pick one.
Right now. Well, it's been an interesting week. I'm going DC.
I thought you were going to pick them. What made them a pick?
Yeah. I mean, we just got that big old Batman webtoon explosion this past week. That was so interesting. Just the past year of DC Comics has been a wild ride. We had all of the OGNs coming out for YA middle grade. Their line was severely cut down. But then we got a bunch of miniseries, new books. This Infinite Frontier is really fascinating as like a publishing initiative. We have all these anthologies, a bunch of digital first stuff, Black Label. They're just trying really everything. I mean, I kind of want to just talk about Batman Reptilian for a little bit. That is the most insane Batman book that I maybe have ever read. Like, they are swinging for sure. And Like, not everything works, but at the same time, they're trying stuff. It's really interesting. Wayne Family Adventures was so good.
Hmm.
Like, it was they just nailed it. Super duper nailed it. And Marvel's in a very interesting transition space.
Yeah. I have to say, with DC, I have admired them even though I still read fewer DC comics than Marvel comics. I really admire what they're doing for the reason you said. They're really making swings. And also, you can see a lot of thought behind what they're doing, even as they're doing these big swings. Like, they're doing the webtoon thing, so they're trying to reach other audiences. They have that Batman book that's coming up. I think it's coming up. I don't think it came out. The one that's like where Batman goes around the world and has creators from around the world, and like they're trying to reach a global audience. They have all these different strategies that they have in place, and not to make it like super boring and like pragmatic and everything like that, but that's, I think, honestly, one of the weirdly fundamental differences between what Marvel and DC are doing right now is when you look at DC, you can see the thought behind it. You can see what they're doing. Marvel, I'm just like, what in the world? You guys are just throwing stuff at the wall and you don't even really care if it sticks. It just is. And it's really strange. But with DC, I think it's really smart that they streamlined their line. I think it's smart that they're doing all these minis and doing these Black Label books, because that does two things. It gives people easy jumping on points that tell concise stories, but also will really quickly become theoretical evergreen collections. And then like Wayne Family Adventures, I mean, it shows that DC is willing to let go of their style if other styles will fit their characters better. And I think that that is really smart and something that these companies are not normally all about. And I think that's part of the reason why I think that's all of why people responded to Wayne Family Adventures. It is exactly what a lot of people would want from these characters. They just never get it.
Yeah, there's just so much between, like, ideologically between DC and Marvel right now that feels very different. Marvel, the films and the TV shows are so successful that it really does feel like their comic line is built all around that as well, versus DC struggles. Like, their cartoons, I feel like, are always killing it. Like, they always will have like a fan base for that, but like Suicide Squad bombed basically, right? Like, that wasn't a huge hit, and Birds of Prey was not a huge hit. Like, they can't really make Margot Robbie as Harley like bring in the huge numbers, which really sucks because I think she's like our best superhero actor right now.
Right.
So, but at the same time, it kind of gives the comics a little bit more freedom to like think outside the box and try some new things. At the same time, we have 1 million Batman books and 1 million Joker books. So like I feel like every month we have, the line is theoretically cut down, except we have like 20 Batman books.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like, I'm going to read that Batman the World book. That looks cool as hell, actually.
Yeah.
That looks really, really, really interesting. And then, but like Batman the Imposter, that seems kind of boring, honestly, especially because like the way they're pitching is like, what if Batman was in the real world? It's like, well, there's 1,000 people have done this already, but that book's getting simultaneous global release as well.
Yeah.
So it's not like a global team, but that's being released all around the world at the exact same time, which does not happen. So they're trying stuff, and like it's just so interesting right now. Wayne Family Adventures, we could talk about that forever. They didn't have anybody I don't know who CRC Payne is. I think it's a pen name. Like, I'm very curious if that might be a creator that we are familiar with that is smart and uses a pen name so that they don't get attacked by crazy Batman fans online.
That's a very common thing on Webtoon, actually. Like, one of the most successful creators on Webtoon. Have you ever read Let's Play?
Oh, maybe. I went like a deep dive, but like that was like months ago.
Let's Play is a Webtoon series that's about basically a coder, like an indie game developer who releases a game, and then this streamer dude just totally trashes it and like kind of ruins her dreams. And then that streamer dude moves in next door to her and becomes like this kind of, meet cute comedy. It's actually really charming. But the person who made that was a creator named Mongi. Like, they went by a pen name named Mongi, and I think her name's like Leanne. I forgot what her last name is, but she went by a pen name for forever, and that's actually a pretty common thing on Webtoon. So I don't know. I mean, I'd be really interested to see if that actually is like a writer X situation where it is like a direct market creator that's doing it. I don't think so though, because honestly, it's like whoever wrote that, I mean, everyone involved got the vibes and the rhythms of Webtoon stuff so well that I don't know if you can fake that. I don't know if a direct mark. I mean, I'm trying to imagine who that works for DC right now could have written that comic, and I'm coming up blank.
Agreed. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know, but it could be. I feel like it wouldn't be somebody at DC. It'd be somebody from like web comics
Oh yeah, absolutely.
or like, yeah, just somebody who was really popular on Tumblr 3 years ago or something that works on Boom Books now or something. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, something like that.
I do want to say though, I think one thing that's really smart about what DC is doing is, I mean, I think it was like October and November in the solicits, like literally half their stuff was Batman or Batman adjacent. And that is weird and maybe too much. But at the same time, I will give them credit. At least they're giving us different flavors of Batman and all those different things. Because what's the Max Sarin book you love so much?
Oh my gosh, the Harley Quinn animated tie-in book.
Oh, is officially a tie-in book?
Yeah, it's a continuation of the cartoon. It like continues where the second season left off.
Oh my God, I didn't know that. I would definitely
Yeah, it's a straight up like extension of the show, and it is so funny. Like I T Franklin is writing like gets the voice of the show down perfectly, and then Max Sarin is just such a good cartoonist.
Yeah,
I think our best character actor person that we have right now.
absolutely.
Just the facial expressions every issue. I just want to take like a million facial expressions and turn them into like a reaction keyboard because you can do like everything.
But I think that, like that, and then you mentioned Batman Reptilian, and then you have, God, the Batman the World, Batman the Imposter I actually completely forgot of. A lot of these are like completely different flavors. Then you have like the mainline stuff, which is, Fear State or whatever that's going on right now. You have a lot of different flavors in the mix. Oh, and then of course Wayne Family Adventures. You have a recognition that the idea of these characters kind of morphs depending on like the expectations of readers morphs depending on who they are. And I think that that's really important because one of the things that's, a lot of these companies treat these characters as one thing at one time, or even one thing at all times. This is, you have to maintain who they are as IP, but they're a lot more malleable than they're given credit for. And I think that, I don't know. I mean, that's one thing that always kind of bugs me, but I do have to ask. So what do you think of DC's overall approach? Like, namely there is a pretty heavy focus on more Black Label and streamlining the mainline back, but adding backups to most of the books, and then also like having more anthologies. Does that appeal to you more than where it was before, where it was like a million single issue titles that all just were together?
Yes, it definitely appeals to me more, but there are definite issues. I mean, the problem with anthologies is that there's almost always some stories you like and some that you don't really care for. So I think it's tricky to ask people to commit to a regular anthology that has maybe one big story that most people are going to be interested in, and then that continues across 6 issues, but then you have the majority of the issue is 3 more stories that are going to be pretty hit or miss. And I have found that to be the case.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it gives a lot of different creators the opportunity to do different things with a lot of different characters. There are so many characters in just the DC universe. I mean, Batman specifically, and they kind of have connected Batman to so many characters, either through The Outsiders or, I don't know, just like Black Canary is considered a Batman character. So like she can show up in these books. I don't know. I really dig it. Black Label has been, for the most part, really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I'm not super interested in like the Brian Azzarello Suicide Squad book or whatever. But there's plenty of other stuff that I am very interested in. So
What makes Reptilian such a standout for you, or like so interesting to you, I guess?
Garth Ennis is like so like hyper cynical with Batman it's full on parody. And like, so the book was supposed to be drawn by Steve Dillon, and uh and then he died. So Liam Sharp, and I can't imagine, like, Liam Sharp goes in the complete opposite direction.
Right.
It's like wild digital painting, super stylized, like very kind of 90s grungy. It's neon at times. Have you read any of it?
I haven't. I'm waiting for a trade on it, to be honest.
It is so weird. So it's basically about something has like attacked all of Batman's villains, and now he's like tracking it down, and it's just like bitchy Alfred banter, and Batman. It's really hard to describe the way that. Did you read All Star? Which is the one where Batman's like, "I swear I'm not a racist."
Oh God, All Star Section 8 or the
is that All Star Section 8?
It was like the dog. It was the dog welder and Six Pack book. Yeah.
Oh my God, those books are so insane. And I mean, the Batman from those books is kind of the Batman that he's writing about.
You know that Garth Ennis just straight up does not like superheroes, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's why. I mean, honestly, I feel like it's an easy sell for, I think, most editors to hire Garth Ennis to do something because it's Garth Ennis. But at the same time, I gotta give DC credit. I feel as if hiring Garth Ennis to do a book that kind of actively is cynical about Batman is another check in their favor of being willing to do different things with these characters. Because most of the time, a lot of publishers hate making fun of their own characters. And Garth Ennis is certainly not big on avoiding that. But I don't know. I'm always amazed how much Black Label stuff is constantly on the horizon, because I remember about a year ago there's like an article by a site that I will not name that was indicating that Black Label was going away, and they have proven that to be extremely not true. And I feel like that really feels as if it's the place where DC is able to just tell creators that they can do what they want and do it as well as they want, or as they can. I'm really, for example, like I'm really excited for the Cliff Chang Catwoman book that's coming up. I mean, I don't know how many times Cliff has written on top of drawing, but I'm really excited to see what he comes up with, because I bet he's got a great story in him, and that he's been enabled to do that. And Chris Conroy and the rest of the team over there, that's awesome to see, I think.
Yeah, the Catwoman book, I'm really looking forward to. Jock's Batman book.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I mean, again, don't know what his writing is like, but, I mean, if he wants to do a book that has no words, that sounds awesome. So, Wonder Woman Historia is coming out.
Oh, yeah.
Finally. Like, and that's Phil Jimenez for the first issue. Then I think it's Nicola Scott for the second.
Oh, nice.
And I don't know who's the third. Yeah, because it's a different artist every time. I think those are going to be big issues too.
Yeah, wasn't that one of the first Black Label books that was announced?
Yeah.
Along
with a Greg Rucka Wonder Woman's daughter book that we've heard absolutely nothing about. So I wonder if that's canceled.
I don't know.
Oh, it's Jean Ha on the second issue.
Oh, nice. Is Nicola Scott still working on it? Is she on the third? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. God, I haven't seen Jean Ha do anything for a while at Marvel or DC, I feel. But, okay, so let's talk about Wayne Family Adventures a little bit. Much ado was made about how many subscribers jumped on board with it. People were really excited about it. And I think that was like a level of enthusiasm that we haven't really seen in a broader sense since House of X, Powers of 10, and in terms of superhero stuff. I mean, even it was more significant because it was freely accessible. I mean, everyone could get on it. We both really liked it. It's a really fun comic. What do you think this does for DC? Like, what door do you think this opens some doors for them?
Yes. I mean, we can compare it to House of X, Powers of 10, but like my tweets about that, I tweeted about this webtoon, like Wayne Family Adventures. It became my most popular tweet in 24 hours. It has like 10,000 likes. And I basically tweeted out like, I am excited.
I remember.
of it. And it blew up like crazy. Like, and I think it has almost 400,000 subscribers after 3 days. And again, it is free. So that's part of it. But I mean, you can pay for the next issue, the next 3 installments. And I mean, I put a little poll up on my Twitter and I had like 70 votes and I think like 10% of them. So 7 people paid for it. But I mean, if you take 10% of 400,000, that's a different number.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, Webtoon, I don't know how much they're looking for. I mean, of course, they're thinking about the dollar amount, but I mean, this is brand awareness, gigantic, huge, like massive brand awareness. I mean, from just a marketing perspective, it's huge.
I think the thing that it's really powerful is like just the fact that it has such a broad cast and it's tethering. I mean, look at like I think you brought this up, but like Teen Titans Go, like the people who are fans of the original Teen Titans cartoon or like Teen Titans Go, those are kind of like fans for life. They want to see those characters forever and in the way that they like them. And I wouldn't be surprised if Wayne Family Adventures does the same thing. If it builds up these characters in a way that they weren't necessarily built up for, it expands on them and gives them a connection with a new audience in the same way that like Teen Titans Go did.
Yeah, and I think that there's the connection with the audience, but I think there's real potential to bring out new aspects of these characters and their relationships in an environment that is not based on them beating up criminals and solving crime or whatever. Like the fun thing about Teen Titans Go is you get to see like their wacky relationships and like those character dynamics in situations that are sitcom-y or full-on absurd cartoony stuff. But it breaks so much from the traditional superhero structure that these characters kind of come to life in a new way.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like seeing them all argue over that cookie.
Oh.
We were in it. We were all invested, and like I felt so much more invested in that than I felt in any of the Fear State stuff, which just feels like it's like I can't watch Gotham get attacked and like by one it's 3 villains or something. I don't know who's actually Scarecrow and somebody else, I think. Peacekeeper, and I can't really keep up. And I mean, that's why I like Detective more than Batman.
Yeah.
I think I might be in the minority. I like that Detective has like kind of like a much more streamlined story. It's Bruce Wayne without like all of the. I mean, he still kind of has the wealth, but it's like a much more stripped down Bruce.
And the network's more limited too, which I like, where it's just
it's just like Oracle and Huntress are in that book, and that's basically it.
Yeah. I will say that as far as books with backups are concerned, Detective has done largely a good job with those. Like I really like the Huntress. God, who was the artist on those? It wasn't Clayton Henry. It was I don't remember. Those original, like the first Mariko Tamaki Detective issues had backups by her that were Huntress, and those were really good. Like the first one was actually like really impactful, and it kind of set her arc there for the entire story. And then they were using those to like build up Hugh Vile, the new villain, and I think it's a really smartly done book. I'm not totally in love with it. I expected to like it more. I think if it was 100% Dan Mora, I probably would love it, but I don't know. Dan Mora cures a lot of ills. It is interesting though when you talk about Wayne Family Adventures, because I mean one of the things that we've kind of talked about a lot over the years is how much we love Hangout Comics, and it's part of the reason why I think both of us love the most recent Runaways run so much. You're able to just kind of sit with these characters and get to know them and care about them as people, and that's not something that mainline books really get a chance to do because they're always going from big battle to big battle. And I think that I'm not saying that Josh Williamson should kick off his run with like, I don't know. Actually, I would suggest Josh Williamson does this where he kicks off his run where he's in Paris and he's just like hanging out in cafes and like talking to people and stuff like that. I could get behind that. But I do think that there's something to be learned here in that the pace doesn't always have to be so punishing in these stories, and that maybe they could connect with more people if they did that.
Absolutely. I mean, watching characters do regular things is really important. I feel. Did you read? I bet you didn't. 'Cause I don't think a lot of people did. But the 2 issues of Red Hood and the Outlaws after
No.
Scott Lobdell left. So there are 2 issues by Sean Martinborough, who writes it,
Wow.
and Tony Akins does the art, and it's really, really good. Like, really good. I was very surprised. It's Jason Todd kind of going back to his old neighborhood and like seeing people from his past and just like going to restaurants, and it's drawn really, really well, and dealing with the villain is, I think, Killer Croc, and it's like an evil designer, like who like uses like superhero designs. It was really fun and such a huge change for Jason Todd, who's such an like what a weird character. Just like in terms of I haven't read I read Under the Red Hood. I thought that was pretty fun, and then he was written by Scott Lobdell for 10 years. So, and I just like didn't really care for any of that.
Well, now he comes after Patrol so he can get cookies. So he very lovable now.
Well, right now Jason Todd is in this Gotham Future Akira book, which is really, really fun. The what is it, Future State Gotham, I think, is that what it's called?
Oh, is that the one that does it continue the story that Josh Williamson and
So
Giannis
Williamson, Dennis Culver is co-writing it too, and then Milano Giannis is the artist.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like a Punchline and Harley issue with a different artist who I'd never heard of before, with a name that I will not be able to pronounce. But let me see. That's a really cool book. Nicola Cizmezia. That's Cizmesija. So
I really enjoyed the Future State stuff that they did with that character before. That was a lot of fun.
That book is really cool. I think you're going to dig it a lot. And then there's like the Chip story just finished in the Urban Legends anthology, and I thought that was really, really good too.
Mm-hmm. It is really interesting. Like again, like these are all different flavors. I mean, how many Jason Todd Akira stories did you think you were going to read? But that really worked. I don't know. Future State is such a weird thing, though. It's like I actually liked a lot of the Future State, like the story that Tamaki and Dan Mora were doing in there was real. I really like that. If that continued, I would have not have been upset. And it was interesting how easy it was to drop some of these characters into completely different situations. I actually really like the Wonder Woman story, the Joelle Jones one. Like that was really fun. And it kind of bums me out because it's like the Yara Flor stuff. Wonder Girl, I want to like, but its release schedule is just so all over the place. And also the fact that Joelle's already not drawing like the full issues just kind of bums me out a bit. But okay, so I want to like kind of wrap up some of the DC stuff. I am interested. What are the things you like the most right now at DC besides Wayne Family Adventures, which let's just both assume that we love that.
Yeah. I'm really digging what Ram V's doing. So the Swamp Thing is really great. The best art Mike Perkins has ever done. Mike Spicer doing awesome work on that book. Talk about being able to do a new take on a character. It's kind of what I like the most about Infinite Frontier, where we have a new version of the character. It is tied to the past. It's tied to this larger universe, but it feels very much its own separate thing. I mean, right now it's like crossing over with Suicide Squad, and it just feels very kind of organic. And I did read the most recent Suicide Squad issue because it had Ambush Bug in it, and I had a really good time. So
let me say one thing about Swamp Thing really quick. I gotta say, I think it's the first time anybody's ever asked Mike Perkins to like do really atmospheric stuff, and it works really well.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I feel like it's the first time I've seen him do like full horror as well, and that's really cool because I feel like he's been in the sort of that Brubaker espionage realm forever. He was on the Lois Lane book, so yeah, he can do some real cool shit, especially with all the plants and stuff. It just looks awesome. I'm really digging the new Milestone books.
Mm-hmm.
They're all kind of going pretty hard. Static has like this very interesting art style that I almost wish Static was on Webtoon. I feel like that would be the perfect kind of book.
Oh, yeah.
Like the Nicholas Draper Ivy, the who does like the finishes over Crisscross. His art is so perfect for Webtoon. It just has like that very manga-y, but also like digital, bright. It's a cool book, and again, they are not really pulling punches. Icon and Rocket in the second issue, like the first issue, is very similar to the original Icon book, and same with Hardware, where the first issue follows a lot of the same beats. But the second issue of Icon and Rocket has Icon. There's this whole flashback to the Civil War where Icon kills Jefferson Davis and like walks out of like the burning Confederacy Capitol with Jefferson Davis's head in his hands. It's like AU stuff that I'm just like, oh. So, and there's a lot more focus on like the government and the cops getting involved in Icon and his story that I think like surprised me a lot. Because I mean, Reginald Hudlin does not have the best comics history for me. So I find like his Black Panther comics almost like unreadable. So I was really impressed with that. And then Hardware, Dennis Cowan and Bill Sienkiewicz are just so insanely good. They are so good. Like, and that book looks amazing. Chris Sotomayor is a colorist who like I'm like hit or miss with. Sometimes I feel like he's doing like Jock Witches, or no, Matt Hollingsworth's coloring in Witches. That's like super splattery, but it almost feels like low res, like not like he didn't do it right. But in Hardware, it definitely looks right.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm liking the Milestone books a lot. We haven't talked anything about Nightwing.
I love Nightwing.
Like, people are really, really liking it. There's some really interesting, like I've seen some interesting rebuttals to this Nightwing run where it's like it almost feels like there's like no conflict for Dick and like internally where he's just like so perfect and
yeah.
But at the same time, it's like sometimes I just want to read like feel good, and like Dick's been such a mess for the last few years that it's like I just want a pretty comic that makes me feel good. And I mean, if you want like your conflicted character, go read Robin,
right?
Because Damien's all kinds of fucked up.
Well, and also just because I mean, yeah, I don't know if you've watched the second season yet, but it's like, you know, it's like in the beginning of the second season of Ted Lasso where everyone's like, oh my God, like everyone's too happy. And then all of a sudden, like Ted Lasso has like a mental breakdown basically, or, you know, not a mental breakdown, but he has a panic attack. And that leads to him, you know, starting to see the sports psychologist and everything like that. And I think that, you know, that's a good example of, you know, maybe everything seems great with Dick right now, but that doesn't, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that Tom Taylor pulled the rug out from under a character if he did that. But I will say that, you know, I like that book a lot, and it does a lot of the things that we're talking about where there's a lot of more of the character present in like the conversations and like kind of getting some more like ordinary life to it to a certain degree. And also Bruno Redondo is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, Adriano Lucas, those two together, they are just crazy good. Like, it's been really interesting seeing the Injustice artists become like these incredible powerhouses, because him and then Daniel Sampere, who does Action Comics, I want to say, is also like really great artist. Unfortunately, I'm not all that into the Superman books right now, except for Superman and the Authority. That book's crazy.
That book is crazy.
That book's bonkers. I'm like, what am I reading? I'm like, he's really hot. That's exciting. It's like super hot Superman, and then just
what is it? Manchester Black?
Manchester Black.
Yeah.
Apollo and Midnighter, Enchantress, Natasha Irons.
Yeah. It is such a fascinating book. And it is kind of funny because it is just kind of like actively making fun of superhero comics as it does it. Yo, everybody. I want to take a quick second to talk about Macroverse. Macroverse is a next-gen mobile comics app, with its tap story format making comics feel totally native on mobile devices, which you can experience over 45 series and 400 episodes, with more launching all the time. It's a perfect time to try it out too. Many of the most popular titles like Hex 11, Dead Town, Glitch, and more are free for a limited time only, so download the app for iOS or Android and binge away. Oh, and keep an eye out on macroverse.com for some major updates on new creators, new series, and new features that bring real collectability to digital comics in a new way. Massive things are coming. If you love making, reading, and or collecting comics, you won't want to miss what Macroverse is launching this summer. And now, back to the show. You know, I think Nightwing versus like Superman Son of Kal-El is a really interesting tale of two Tom Taylors. In that, like, Nightwing, I think, has the right balance, and maybe Superman Son of Kal-El goes too far on one side.
I agree.
And it's interesting because I like a lot of that book, but it is a little bit too, like, I don't know, Dick Grayson doing, I don't even remember what he called it, but like the Alfred Pennyworth, like, foundation thing that he created. That makes sense. Like, that's like a very earned beat over the history of Dick Grayson. I don't know if, like the John stuff makes sense so fast, but maybe, I don't know. That's an interesting book because that. Also, like, I'm a little bit more mixed on like if that was maybe a different artist than John Timms. John Timms is pretty good. There's some beats he really nails, but I don't love his stuff overall. And I wonder if there is like a different artist that would ground it a little bit more for me. I don't know.
I have the exact same feelings about that book.
Yeah, it's an interesting book. I mean, it's what, 2 issues deep?
Yeah, 2 issues.
Yeah.
I mean, between that, Robin is a lot of fun. I really, really like Robin, and the art on that book is so good. Like, it's just giving me the best of kind of like late 90s Wildstorm.
Wait, who's the artist on that?
I know Jorge Corona did a fill-in, and then the main artist on it is Gleb Melnikov.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's just like, yeah, it's very Jim Lee, but I don't know. I really like it.
That's Josh Williamson too, right?
Yeah, and Williamson is pretty hit or miss for me, honestly, but he's definitely hitting on Robin. I was like, Infinite Frontier, the main miniseries, seems like totally incomprehensible to me, and it ends with just like a million multiverses. Then I'm like, there's too many multiverses at this point. Like, one multiverse is already so many universes. Now we have multiple multiverses. I just can't handle it.
You know what I think is really fascinating? I feel like in the last like 8 years or something, I don't even know if you would call Infinite Frontier an event, but like these kind of structural mini series that everything is built around, I feel like they went from focal points to things I largely ignore. And I don't know if that's a qualitative thing or if I've changed. It's interesting.
Yeah, I have no idea, actually, because I feel the same way, where it's like, it's rare where I'm, especially with DC, where it's like the book that kind of brings all the threads together is something that I'm just not interested in. And maybe it's because I don't care about the overarching story anymore. I'm like, it's so much more interesting when people can tell their own smaller story and have their own point of view.
Yeah, well, existing within a shared universe where like other characters can pop in or something. Like, I liked one beat I really liked in Nightwing was when Dick was in with his spoiler for Nightwing if you're not reading it, his sister hanging out in like her, like the mayor's mansion or whatever it is, the mayor's brownstone. And he was out of contact for a little while. And there's this little scene where like Oracle calls off the troops basically. And it shows like every single superhero that has any connection to Dick Grayson, like coming to save him basically. And and like that was like a really nice beat. That's the type of like shared universe interconnectivity I want out of my books like that. And that works really well. But sometimes the too grandiose stuff, it's a turnoff lately. And I don't know, again, like I said, it's just like, I don't know if it's a quality of event thing or if it's maybe I'm just changing as reader. I'm not sure. But okay, last DC question. James Tynion left to do Substack stuff. That's gonna create a pretty substantial hole to fill. My argument has always been that this type of stuff happens. Like, they will find, they already did. They found Josh Williamson to write Batman. They will find other people to kind of fit this architect role. Do you feel like that is like a substantial loss, or is that just like business as usual for a publisher like that?
I mean, I feel like it's business as usual, honestly. Like,
I do too.
the bigger thing with Substack is losing more people, losing all of their heavy hitters,
Right.
which is a possibility. Like, the thing is, Substack's going to open up a lot of space for new creators to come up and tell their own stories. But yeah, Substack, very, very, very interesting situation. And like, I don't know. I want new blood on Batman. And I mean, Joshua Williamson is so much in this like current school of DC people. Like, I felt like Mariko Tamaki's voice on Detective feels different than the Tom King or Scott Snyder that we've had, and Tynion is so close to Scott Snyder.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they are like protege, and it's so similar that I'm totally fine with a new person coming in there. Mm-hmm. Although I love Jorge Jimenez.
Oh yeah,
the art is just unbelievably good. So as long as he's sticking around, I'm happy. But also, like, Jorge Molina is going to be on it, another amazing artist who's never, I don't think, has drawn anything for DC, or at least not any Batman. So I'm really excited about that. And yeah, I'm very curious. Like, I find it really interesting that like the Bendis experiment just didn't work. Where just like Jinx World is gone. He's only writing Justice League right now. Is that it?
I think so.
He's writing Checkmate.
Oh yeah.
But like, Checkmate was a book that was supposed to come out a year ago.
Yeah,
so
I feel like Checkmate's probably done.
When Checkmate is, yeah, oh, I'm sure. And then maybe he'll be writing Naomi for them still. I think that there is going to be a season 2 of that book, but maybe it'll just be David F. Walker and Jamal Campbell. Mm-hmm. I mean, Jamal Campbell has to draw it. I'm not really interested in any Naomi stories that are not by him. So,
I just want all stories to be drawn by Jamal Campbell.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Far Sector. That was bomb. Yeah. That was literally the best. So, like, and I can't wait. Do we know what's going on with the collection of that? Like, that needs to be this crazy, beautiful hardcover.
I have no idea. I would hope so, but I mean, honestly, Marvel and DC like collection games is so weird to me anymore. But okay, So before we jump into Marvel, I do want to bring up, so you had mentioned to me when we were chatting before this that you kind of want to talk about like the broader state of things, like the general disruption that's happening right now between like DC's deal with Webtoon, big name creators signing deals with Substack to produce comics through that platform, all the change on the distribution side of things, and like assuredly like plenty of other things we don't even know about, and how that kind of all impacts the superhero side of the world. I mean, obviously that is like kind of the name of the game right now, but to be honest, most of the time when we talk about stuff, it's more about the comics, and like you write mostly about the comics. So we normally don't have like the big industry like conversations. I'm interested, like what makes that such an interesting topic to you in terms of like the superhero side?
Well, it's all about adaptability. How are these companies going to adapt in the new world? I mean, Substack, I don't think that they're going to be putting on newsletters or anything, but now they have to deal with that as a competitor that's taking creators away. And I mean, that should spark some sort of conversation about creator rights and what can we do to keep our talent here, because we know it's a complete total disaster. So it's like, people don't want to, Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman don't want to bring their new superhero team to Marvel,
right?
Like, they're not going to do that because Marvel owns that, and they're not going to get a cut of that. We've seen like story after story after story of people that are seeing their characters on screen and they have no money for it. So like that, and that's been an issue forever. I mean, Jonathan Hickman has been pretty open about saying, give Marvel and DC your shit ideas and keep the good stuff for yourself. Go do your creator-owned stuff, or remix the stuff that they already have.
Yeah.
They already have a bajillion characters. Just, mix them up, combine them, throw it out, like put in the blender and serve it up. Superhero people are going to eat it. So,
I mean, it's like, when Hickman came on this podcast, he told me, I'm paraphrasing, so this is not a direct quote, but effectively, there are no new ideas in House of X and Powers of 10. Like, basically everything was using. I mean, there are, but it's like it's like what you're saying, where you're remixing these characters and putting them in new situations, but there's nothing new there. And I think that's really smart, but at the same time, it also is like a very tenuous position for Marvel and DC because, I mean, I remember that this was under threat too around like 2009, 2010, 2011 when there was that real push to Image, and they were losing all their top creators because nobody wanted to give up the rights. And Substack is a different threat, but in some ways, I don't know. Most of the creators that have signed on are not leaving their big two jobs entirely. Tynan is unusual in that regard. But at the same time, if they are getting like 6-figure deals where they can do whatever they want, and the choice becomes, do I want to keep writing Robin or do I want to take a 6-figure deal? It's not going to be a hard choice to make.
Yeah. So, that's one aspect of disruption. And I mean, kind of the collapse of Diamond that we are seeing right now is very interesting. Like Marvel and DC have both pursued different distribution avenues. So, I mean, very curious how, again, I'm not a retailer though, and you talk to retailers all the time, so you have a much better idea about that. But I mean, this does impact what they do. I mean, there's a reason that DC is putting out a bunch of YA and middle grade books because they saw there's an audience for that. They can get their books in libraries and bookstores. And I mean, I've seen this past week with all of the conversation about Webtoon and like how stores are adapting. I saw somebody talking about how they went into a store and that store basically doesn't carry monthly single issues anymore at all, where it's basically just they get a lot of the like kid books specifically, and then they get collections of stuff and Star Wars. Mm-hmm. Star Wars is like the only monthly books that they get because that's like they can always like cross sell that basically. And there's always going to be a Star Wars person that comes in, but otherwise they just like the boxes of back issues. If you want back issues, they sell bundled up like back issue storylines too. Mm-hmm. That's like their entire business model. So like we'll get into Marvel's like how they responded with the Webtoon stuff, but like DC, they didn't put that stuff on DC Infinite. They put it on Webtoon. They put it where the people are, which is extremely smart. And the thing is, maybe they're not making that much money off of it, but
it's not about money though. I mean, it is about money, but it's not about short-term money. It's like they don't give a shit if people do Fast Pass. They want to build. I mean, everything that these companies do is an IP game, and IP is about eyes.
Like when you have 50 of those Wayne Family Adventures chapters with over 1 million subscribers, and then you start selling plushies, like that's where your money's coming now. You want your little Jason Todd stuffed animal or like a Funko Pop or something, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. So like they can work with this.
I do want to say I think it's really funny that the movie coming out after Wayne Family Adventures is what appears to be the darkest Batman movie that's ever been made.
Whatever. Gone. I mean, maybe it'll be good. Who knows?
I think it'll be good. It's just, it's like, that's one of the interesting, I mean, I mentioned earlier, it's just, they're fine making huge stylistic shifts. And I don't know if you could ask anyone to have a more stylistic or a bigger stylistic shift than going from Wayne Family Adventures to the Batman, where it's going to be like, I mean, the trailer is almost, I like the trailer while also admitting that it is almost like a self-parody level of dark. Anyways, okay, so let's talk about Marvel. I do want to talk about let's start by talking about the Infinity Comics deal that they're doing through Marvel Unlimited. I do want to point out that this, I mean, obviously this is not a reaction. This has been in the works for a long time. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested in what you think about that, because it is the same thing-ish, but done through a walled garden platform. How much does that change that for you?
A lot. I think that there's a lot of different things between the two of them. So one of them, the biggest thing is the paywall. So these comics are just not going to get the same amount of eyes on them. I mean, like, exactly. So that was the other side of it, where I think like the most successful books in there are probably like the Jeff comic, which is, and like probably like the Little Marvels book, which at least like flows better. And like, I mean, the Hickman book was trolling. That was just trolling in a good way. I laughed. I had a fun time. But like, I feel like if I spent $10 to get that, I would have. And I mean, I did. Like that is what I did. But I mean, if I bought Marvel Unlimited, I'd already have Marvel Unlimited.
Right.
So like, if I bought it to get that comic, and then it was just uh me scrolling for 3 minutes to watch Wolverine falling, like it's fun. It's a like it was like fun to watch Wolverine punch somebody in the face over and over again. But at the same time, it's not like it didn't really have a lot of substance to it. And I was hoping for something like that from Hickman, considering that now he's like, if this is like his next big thing, which it's not. It definitely didn't give me that vibe at all. But like versus, it's interesting because I say that was slight versus like the Wayne family adventures. Not a lot happens in them. Those are also extremely slight stories. But like I got like they felt satisfying in a much different way.
Yeah, you get good feelings from it. I mean, as opposed to the other one where it is just a normal superhero story that, I mean, I think part of the problem with that is trying to fit the normal structures of superhero stories into that format is, and also working with, typical like print comic creators. I think Declan Shalvey did an amazing job at like making that work and visually. Like I think like the using the whole the structure of how it just kept going down and then like the thud as he hits like the ship. I mean that's like a good comic or a comedic beat. But at the same time, I don't know if normal superhero comics can have like the usual structure or usual weight in that structure. And at least in the current setting, just because I don't think that that's how like if you put like Dan Jurgens on like one of those comics, is he going to start thinking about it exactly like a webtoon creator would? Or is he going to think about it like Dan Jurgens would, Sorry, Dan.
Oh boy. At the same time, I kind of overlooked the Captain America book, which I did really like actually.
Yeah,
and
I also like that they're doing the primers. The primers are smart.
Yeah, they just are ugly. they're smart, but they're ugly, and they look like they weren't done by somebody who knows the medium or whatever. Like the thing is, it is a different medium. So like DC went and they got a storyboard artist. Mm-hmm. Then like they knew that, and it flows so well versus these do not flow as well. There's a lot more white space in between. Like there's just, I don't know. It feels like somebody pulled up the giant like vertical bar on Photoshop and then they just like copied and pasted it from a comic that Mark Bagley had already done. That like it just becomes not all that interesting to me.
Do you think that DC hired the people for the Wayne Family Adventures, or do you think Webtoon did? I guess it doesn't really matter ultimately, but I sort of feel like Webtoon was the one. I don't know. That's not even really worth conjecture, but I do wonder if Webtoon brought the Webtoon-styled creators to the table because that's people that they know. But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think the Infinity Comics stuff, it's, like you said, I don't know if it's really a satisfying draw for people, and I don't know how it builds the audience because it is just mostly more of the same. It's really interesting. Like I wrote this in my Friday column, and my whole thing with it is it feels like a typical Marvel idea in the sense that I can see the logic behind it, but it doesn't go far enough to make it a really actually interesting ida. And that might be mean.
No, I think that's exactly what it is, though, where it's telling the same stories in this new form versus telling new stories in a new form, and really understanding what makes Webtoon popular and then adapting our biggest character into this world.
Right.
That we know is going to get people crazy. And they went ballistic.
They just need to put Faith Erin Hicks pitch comic about Wolverine and his eggs into Marvel Unlimited, and then everyone would read it and love it. I don't know if you ever read that comic. It's the best. Have you read it?
uh, Wolverine and his eggs.
Yes, he gets up. Faith Erin Hicks did this comic that she pitched. I think it was for either Girl Comics or for Strange Tales or one of those things. And it was about Wolverine getting up, and the young students had eaten his precious Canadian eggs, and so he
Oh my
goes to the
gosh, this
grocery
actually
store.
does sound familiar.
Yeah, he goes to the grocery store so he can buy more eggs, and of course, like I think hand ninjas attack, and he's just like, I just want to eat breakfast, and the whole thing is basically about him wanting to eat eggs, and it's amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Just put that, get Faith to finish that, put it up there. People love it.
That's wonderful. I mean, it's just, I mean, the Wayne Family Adventures gives me very serious, like, Spidey zine vibes, Hannah Blumenreich kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Which is just like, that stuff was incredibly popular too. And that's, yeah, I would like to see Marvel try that. I mean, I just don't know.
Yeah.
It's very, very tricky because, like, how much value do they get out of this as well? And I think Marvel is still very much always thinking about how can we repackage this and put it out so that print can have it too.
Oh, it's gonna.
Whereas I feel like DC isn't as concerned. Did you read Sophie Campbell's Streaky story in Superman?
No.
The Superman Red, White, and Blue anthology. It's amazing.
You know, there's so many of those red, white, and blues and black, white, and reds. And yeah, like there was just an Electro one, although the Electro one had an unbelievable John Romita Jr. cover. I think I'm ultimately waiting for collections on that, although I heard the red, white, and blue one's really good.
I mean, like all of them, some of them are really good. Some of them are whatever, but Sophie Campbell doing Streaky on the loose when it's Supergirl and Superman trying to get Streaky in her crate and just will not happen. And it is so funny. It's so good. And did you ever read Kyle Baker's Letitia? I think it's Letitia Lerner, Superman's babysitter.
No.
It was in Bizarro Comics. Oh my gosh. You need to read Bizarro Comics. They just re-released it.
I know. I didn't even actually know, because that was when I wasn't reading comics for a while. And when I was doing like kind of a history piece on Strange Tales, like the Marvel anthologies, somebody brought up Bizarro Comics, and I was like, I didn't even know that existed.
Oh yeah, I mean, Bizarro Comics was like my introduction to the world of indie comics almost, because that came out right when I was starting to read comics.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this story that was supposed to be in a different Superman anthology, and DC wouldn't run it because it's this babysitter. At one point, the babysitter put Superman in the microwave on accident, and they wouldn't let her do it. They wouldn't let Kyle Baker.
I presume this is like a baby version of Superman, right?
Yes, it's baby Superman. It's like the mom and pa can't need a babysitter, so they get a babysitter, like bye, and then they know that everything's gonna be awful, and basically the baby destroys the entire house essentially, and they're like, oh my god, thank you so much. Like they come back, they're like, thank you so much. We needed that so badly.
I think that Marvel's in an interesting place because, you know, in terms of their big things that they have going, I would say over the last few years, the biggest things they had going were, you know, the larger X-Men line and Hickman's leaving. You have Immortal Hulk, which is ending. You have, I mean, you know, your mileage may vary, but Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman's Venom was very popular.
No, that's definitely huge.
Over. I'm trying to think of what else. I mean, Jason Aaron's Avengers run will never end. And I say that with no slander, but I mean, it is going.
I haven't read it in like 30 issues.
I haven't either.
It's going in long, and it's just like, why is the book not interesting at all?
I don't know.
I'm really struggling. But I mean, I also am not really reading Justice League either.
Yeah.
Like I'm reading Justice League Dark, but that's also because right now it's Ram V and Sumit Kumar. It's a full D Savage Shores reunion.
Oh my, yeah.
That book is really, really pretty. But
I mean, it's just interesting that Marvel has all these endings, and I don't know what the next thing is. And obviously, like, it's not like Hickman leaving ends the X-Men line. But I mean, I guess, what do you think about where Marvel is in terms of, like, we already talked about how it seems like they're just kind of like playing a guessing game to a certain degree, but how do you feel about them, where they are and where they're going right now?
Yeah, I mean, I still very much go to like Avengers Trinity when I evaluate where Marvel's at, and like where Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man at right now. And Thor's with Donny Cates still. I don't read that book.
I like it. I mean, I also am a huge
Did it
Nick
get
Klein
better?
fan.
I like Nick Klein. I mean, the artists on that are really good, but I thought I really didn't like that opening arc at all. Like, at all.
It's interesting because Donnie is just going to get darker than other Thor writers would, and so like this, the next really big arc that's about like basically Donald Blake
Yeah.
is smart, but your mileage will really vary depending on how much you're into like a kind of grimdark Thor story. But Nick Klein draws the hell out of it, and Frog Thor's in it, and I'm all about that.
Yeah, I mean, I might check it out again. Marvel Unlimited, it's all there. So,
Yeah.
and then Iron Man is, I dig Iron Man actually right now. It's a weird book.
Oh, that's Cantwell. Yeah.
That's Cantwell and Cafu.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then Angel Unzueta also does fill-ins on that, which are fine. But I mean,
Respect my stilt man.
Iron Man villains are not things that I know really, like Iron Man rogues. So I thought it was really fun. Like the way that that book started, where it's like, yes, we have Korvac and all the big stuff, but also here are like Iron Man has his own villains. So let's show you who they are again. And sometimes Christopher Cantwell can feel a little Tom King light to me. And Iron Man, I think, gets a little bit more away from that and has a little bit more of a sense of humor. I mean, Tom King also has a sense of humor sometimes, but it can all get like, I don't know how aware he is of it sometimes. Like maybe it's unintentional. But, and then, I mean, Christopher Campbell's also doing Captain America right now. He's doing the United States of Captain America, which I think is like an interesting idea. I'm not fully caught up on it though. I read the first issue and thought it was solid, but like, again, I'm not like crazy effusive about any of this.
Is that transitioning into like a new series? Because it's like only like a 5-issue mini, I think, isn't it?
It's a 5-issue mini. I have no idea.
It's interesting. I feel like this whole thing is a very, I mean, there's exactly what you're going for, but it's a microcosm where Marvel's at, where it just, everything kind of feels like it's transitioning.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a feel for where it's going. And that's such an odd thing for Marvel and DC, from what I understand, basically think in 18-month chunks. They always have a plan. They always, I feel like, should feel as if they have a plan. I don't know if I see that, and it's very weird. Like even, okay, so I know that there's a lot of hand-wringing over like Hickman leaving, both in the sense that some people are like, what the hell? This is like ruining the whole thing. And other people are like, no, there's still good stuff. Stick around. I will say that when basically it came out that he wanted to move on to the next phase and everyone was like, no, let's stick around here for a little longer. And he was like, okay, but I'm going to have to go because of that, basically, as a very abbreviated explanation for what happened. That made a lot of sense to me because it did feel like things had stalled a bit. How are you feeling about the X-Men line right now?
I agree with you. I do think I agree with you where like I still really like it, but I think we did maybe need to go into the next phase.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I don't know if that meant like dismantling Krakoa though, which is like an idea that I really, really like and want to stick around. But like, where are we at right now with the line? So I still think Hellions is my favorite, which is truly insane. But
is great.
I love Hellions, and having Roger Antonio on the last few issues was awesome. Oh my gosh, he's doing the new She-Hulk book with Rainbow Rowell.
Yeah.
I'm real excited about that.
That was like the one of those 10. I mean, I'm excited for more of Marco and Chip's Daredevil stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's an existing series in a different name. That's all that is.
Yeah.
Rainbow and Roger on She-Hulk is the one I'm most excited for.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And losing Runaways was a blow. That was a tough one.
But for X-Men, I want to say my favorite, I mean, it's kind of like more nebulous because it connects to like the Guardian stuff right now, but I love Sword. I'm a huge Sword fan.
Sword is awesome. I mean, Al Ewing is so good. And Sword is like a very like proactive book in ways that I find very interesting.
Yes.
Like, I really like Abigail Brand when we talk about like conflicted protagonists. She's all kinds of messed up. But I mean, that's kind of a lot of characters on that book. Oh, did you read Cable Reloaded? Yes, you
Hell
did. And
yeah.
you tweeted about it.
I
I
love it.
remember you loved that. Yeah, Cable Reloaded was awesome. I mean, Way of X was really cool.
I really
If
like
they
Way of
want
X.
to, I mean, if like the creators that they have involved with the X line are still awesome. So Cy Spurrier is not done yet. Zeb Wells is doing great. I mean, I really like Jerry Duggan. I think Marauders has had some weird issues recently.
Well, Marauders, I think, is to a certain degree a microcosm for the line right now, where it's still going, but I don't know where it's going.
Yes, absolutely. I feel, and which is weird because it's like I feel like Marauders was driving so much early on, and it was like it got people really, really excited. And
But I think it got where it was going, right?
yeah,
The Hellfire Gala. And now I don't really know what its focus is. And it is really interesting. I mean, I always like kind of beat this drum where I feel like these, especially in the Krakoan era, where they're trying to deliver different types of books for different people. I feel like the books that stand out the most are the ones that have like a clear objective or point to what they're really trying to do, like a clear contribution. Like Sword is expanding the universe. They're like the whole Mysterium thing was awesome. Like that was really cool. And like they're kind of in like all the Snark War and all those different things. It's building it up in a really effective way. Hellions is just like, I like that one because Hellions, well, first off, it's hilarious. And second off, it's just like what happened to all the loser mutants basically, and like what are they doing when they're like running missions with Mr. Sinister, and that one really works because of that. But and like Way of X, I know that people were kind of mixed on that, but I mean, to me, you need a book like Way of X because it was the contrarian book. It was the one that was like, I'm not sure about Krakoa, and I think that that's valuable. And the other stuff, it just kind of, a lot of the other books just feel like they're kind of going through the motions, and I just like, it's hard for me to envision where we're headed, and that kind of makes it tough because it started with such a clarity of vision.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And I mean, at the same time, I still read most of them at this point. I think I might even be reading all of them.
Does Hickman's departure like affect your interest in the overall line, or you still just
Not really.
enjoy it?
I felt like he had been stepping back. So it's like, and at the same time, this entire thing has been a brain trust from the beginning.
Absolutely.
So yes, Hickman's been in charge, but all these people have been collaborating, and like keeping this group around that's smart. Like, and like taking advantage of the chemistry that they have. And I mean, it seems like they're trying to do that with Spider-Man coming up soon too, which I'm very curious about, because I mean, I feel like the last couple years of Amazing Spider-Man were a total snooze. Were people even buying it? Like, just the Spencer era of Spider-Man has completely passed me by, and I think I read like 2 issues.
I think I read like 15 or 20. It's been a long
Wow.
time since I read it. I mean, I enjoyed the Superior Foes of Spider-Man, like elements that were worked in.
Love that book.
But it did not continue in that vein. And once it started, I think I stopped when they did like, there's a Kraven storyline. I don't know if you read it, but it was, I shouldn't be laughing about it because it's literally about the death of Kraven and his replacement with his son who looks exactly like Kraven, which was an extremely comic book solution. But I don't know. I mean, one other X-Men book I forgot to mention. I really loved X Factor, and I was really bummed out that it ended how it did. And then I was really even more bummed out to find out that it was because of basically, editorial meddling. They saw like a greater vision for where the story could go, so they did the whole trial of Magneto thing. But it totally torpedoed the finale of X Factor, which is too bad because Leah Williams and David Baldeon, I thought, were doing a really great job in that book. That was a fun book.
Yeah, I mean, I thought X Factor was really up and down, but the stuff that worked for me really worked, and I found extremely interesting. Like stuff about kind of like, I don't know, I was really into like the resurrection like protocol stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just like so into that process in a weird way. And like I liked it when they were actually doing like the investigating.
Yeah.
That aspect of the book worked for me. But
Morgan.
like, yeah, the Morgan stuff was really weird in a good way, actually. But I found like, I don't know, like some of the relationship stuff felt like too cutesy to me, which is seems counterproductive because I like that stuff a lot of the time. But like
You like it done in a certain
the
way?
yeah, but I don't know, like why didn't like Daken and Aurora work for me? Like maybe I just felt like it was like so in the kind of like bad boy with a heart of gold trope, but like I mean people really liked it as well. But when the book was getting more into it was so weird because normally when books delve into the relationships, I like them more. But that one, I preferred it when they stuck to like the procedural aspect of the book.
I think the one really personal thing that I loved in it was the expansion of iBoy and like just all of
Yes.
like I'm a I am a resident iBoy fan. So anybody given iBoy the day as time of day is you know my fave. But at the same time, like really interesting stuff done there, and it was a perfect book for him. I don't know. I mean, in terms of the investigation stuff, that team was picked very perfectly. I agree with you where some of the relationship stuff didn't totally work, and I don't know if the Prodigy story would have worked better if it had been given more time to complete as opposed to the really rushed way it ended in 10.
Really bad.
But it just some of the stuff, yeah, I mean that's one of the things though is like this stuff is always so noisy because did it go like this because that's the way it was planned, or did it go this way because it was forced to be like this? And that's one of the tough things with superhero comics where it's hard to, you know, it's hard to decide where the the onus for 10 lies. It's a fascinating book, but
Yeah.
okay, we talked about what our favorites were for DC. I think we've kind of already touched on some of our favorites for Marvel. What are your favorites going right now besides things we've already talked about at Marvel?
Yeah. So R.I.P. Immortal Hulk because that was the bomb. So that's gonna be sad to see go. Let me see.
I love Guardians. I'm just really into Last Annihilation and all that stuff.
I'm into everything Al Ewing writes, literally everything. Although Defenders is weird because I love looking at it, and I think like the story's fun, but I'm not getting like the super duper meat that I usually get from an Al Ewing story. Even like his most frivolous stuff usually has like a really strong emotional core, and I don't know how much I'm getting that from Defenders.
I feel like it's a Javier Rodriguez showcase.
Yeah, which I think is also fine because like Ewing's awesome at that. Like that's like a thing that I find different. Like I like Al Ewing can get wordy too, but it's never at the expense of the art, which I feel like sometimes that can happen with like somebody like a Tynion, where there's so much on the page that I'm almost losing the impact of the visuals because there's so much prose and I have to spend so much of my mind on that, and that carries me through the page instead of focusing a lot more on the art.
Mm-hmm.
But let's see. What do I mean, again, I'm so sad Runaways is done.
Me too.
Like, that's such a huge bummer. Like, and I didn't love the art change in Guardians. So I was glad that when Stefano Caselli came on for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bummer because
It's hard to go from Juan Cabal to anybody.
Exactly. Yeah, Juan Cabal. I mean, Juan for Gary is not bad, but it's just, man, Cabal is. Honestly, I think you could make an argument for Pepe Larraz, but I'm probably more on.
Yes.
I love Juan Cabal. He's probably my favorite Marvel artist right now, and him going on Black Panther is awesome. But it is a bummer because I really liked Guardians with him on it.
Yeah, and that book's delayed now until December, I want to say.
Is it? Damn it.
Yeah, it was supposed to come out this month and it got delayed. So the fact that I'm having a hard time of even thinking about Marvel books right now, I feel like says a lot. So I mean, I love Daredevil.
Yeah, I was going to say Daredevil.
That's been awesome. But I feel like so much of my attention for Marvel goes to the X-Men books right now.
Mm-hmm.
I dig Black Widow. Like, I think that's a really gorgeous book, especially that book has really, really, really creative action sequences.
I heard it's really good. I need to check it out. I haven't read it yet.
Yeah. Like, there's some aspects of it I don't love that, like, they kind of led with giving Natasha like a husband and a kid, and like it's very much about like her being a mom and then having that taken away from her, which is like that just doesn't like vibe necessarily with like my view of that character, but I think that Kelly Thompson makes it work. And again, the art is crazy, crazy good. That's Elena Casagrande, I want to say.
I've always really liked Elena Casagrande.
And some of the action sequences in that book are out of this world. I really liked that first issue of Kazar.
I didn't read it.
Which is Herman Garcia, though, who's just like an insanely talented artist. He did the Immortal Hulk 25.
Yeah, is he doing that style, or is he kind of doing more like a...
No, it's...
My mind is eternally trapped on 90s Andy Kubert for Kazar. Like, that's what I think of. What...
No. Much, very different. It's not quite that Immortal Hulk style, because that book was...
insane.
So weird. Like that. Well, that issue was all like crazy sci-fi stuff. This is much more in the horror realm, but it is gorgeous. Think of, Matt Lopez is doing the colors for it, so it has almost that like. It's not that far of a line between Bilquis and Herman Garcia.
Interesting.
Although Herman is more of like, think of like Bilquis Evely meets David LaFuente.
Okay. Wow. That would be like my favorite artist. So
it's good. It's real, real good. I loved Wave X. I needed a good Nightcrawler story, and we got a crazy good Nightcrawler story.
Yeah.
So good. I am fully obsessed with Adam Kubert's art on Wolverine. It's like one of the... and like, I don't know when I became such a huge Adam Kubert fan, but like...
He's really good.
His layouts are so good. They're so interesting, and it's very interesting seeing him do kind of like similar... like him and Mike Diodato kind of try similar things with like weird panel arrangements and like lines in them and stuff. And like Kubert's work and Diodato's don't work at all for me. So like I really dig him on Wolverine. But Wolverine is like so up and down too. It's like when he's on it, it's really good. When he's not on it, it's less good.
The greatest upset there is in Marvel Comics today is the fact that I am not reading the one Wolverine comic in the line, which is extremely unusual. Wolverine...
You should read it. I like it.
I read the first bit, but the up and down killed me. Like the vampire stuff just didn't work for me at all.
Just skip it. You'll be fine.
Okay.
Just skip the vampire stuff, honestly, and go to the Solem stuff. Because right now it's with Solem. And I love Araco.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Like,
it's super
weird. Why
do
I care so much about this random...
This is why you love Hellions. Hellions is so fucking weird.
Stupid. I liked the new Moon Knight. Quite a bit. I liked the new Moon Knight book. There's 2 issues of it. I haven't read much of Jed MacKay's stuff. I read a couple issues of Black Cat. Thought it was fine, but he's writing a ton for them right now. And Moon Knight had the goods. The art in that book is crazy as well. Very much kind of in like, there's like a camp of artists. I think they're all Italian too, like Simone Di Meo and Daniele Di Nicolo and the guy on Moon Knight whose name is Alessandro Capuccio. They all have like very similar, very dynamic, like a tiny little bit manga inspired, but it's like a really cool fusion of like East and West. And it's a cool book. Every issue of Moon Knight has had one killer sequence, which is like, honestly, sometimes I just need like one crazy, amazing sequence in a book for me to feel like it was worth it. And you know who did that all the time? Daniel Warren Johnson, Gatorade Bill.
That was a really fun book. I love that. I love the cutout of, oh my God, Scuttlebutt of like the ship as they were like, as they were going through space, like that, being able to see the whole thing. That was just so amazing. But okay, 2 questions to close. First, favorite superhero comic not from the big 2. Do you have one? Or like superhero Jason?
I'm glad that you asked about this because I was going to talk about it during an earlier tangent, and it is Sophie Campbell's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Nice.
That is, so I'm reading that only in trade. But so the second trade came out a few months ago. It's so good. I mean, again, we are very into the vibes, and that book has it for sure. The first arc of it, though, is written and drawn by her, and just so good. So good. exactly zero attachment to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as a property. There's no real nostalgia there for me. Like, but that first story arc, which is like, I guess Splinter just died, and so it's like this kind of like extremely somber start. Like, it starts with all of them separate, and it almost gave me like the second half of Little Women vibes.
Oh my God.
Where it's like,
speaking your language,
family split apart after like a big death, and then like them coming back together and finding their way back. It's really cute. There's like a lot of really cute little animal characters. Apparently, like the status quo for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is that like there was like a mutant creating bomb that went off in New York. So there's like a whole area of New York that's just all of these like half human, um, half animal mutants. And like Sophie Campbell's doing some really interesting stuff with like identity, and like one of the characters who's like now half salamander trying to like talk to her family, and like they refuse to vid chat with her because they like don't want to see this new version of her, which I find a very, very interesting allegory. So yeah, that's a good book. Highly recommend it. Definitely check out that first volume. It's TMNT Reborn, and it's so good.
I'm not a TMNT guy either, but I will say that from people I trust in comics, I've heard that basically since like this modern era started, where like Tom Waltz and like Matteo Santaloco and other people were working on it, I've heard it's been consistently very good.
Yeah, I know people really like the Paul Aller stuff too, and I mean it's just like it was a time where it was like nonstop TMNT and Transformers stuff, and I had like no interest in the properties felt very inaccessible, which is so funny because I'm a superhero comic reader, the most inaccessible of like all this shit.
Yeah, you're already in it though.
But it's exactly, I was already in it, so it's like I can't jump into Transformers lore. That's like the hardest.
Oh my God, yeah.
I don't know why. It's just like it's so hard for me to get into Transformers, and I mean I felt that way about TMNT until I was finally just like, I like Sophie Campbell a lot. Yeah. Let's check this out. And I was like, holy shit, that's good.
My one, I'm going to say, and I know you were mixed on this to begin with. I don't know if you even have continued to read it at all, but I really like Firepower. Like Chris Samnee is so good on that book. And that book has a lot of the vibes that we're talking about. There's a lot of just like hanging out and feelings and things like that. And there's really like, I really enjoy how Robert Kirkman has seemingly played into Chris Samnee's strengths a lot, where there's a lot of sequences where it's just like silence and him just like figuring things out. Or just there's this one really amazing, I forgot what issue it was like 10 or something, and there was all these three assassins were sent to go take down like the main character, and they're like, oh, if we succeeded this, we can finally go home. And then the next scene is them sitting on a plane in complete silence in a double page spread, all looking beat up on this horrible coach flight. And it is like, it's such a great moment. And it's also a great microcosm for what works in that book, in the sense that they take time to deliver those moments where it just adds a little weight and adds a little humor and makes it a little bit more fun. That book, I don't know. I mean, I know people were mixed on it to start, but it's actually really fun.
Oh yeah, I didn't like the prelude at all. I was like, this is like, it just felt like such a Iron Fist ripoff that I was just like, okay, this just feels like the exact same thing I've read a million times before. And then I read the start of the actual series. I was like, oh, this is what the series is. I like this a lot better. Like, okay, cool. This is like just like pure Kirkman too. I mean, it's like him very much leaning. It's like early Invincible vibes as well. I do keep up with it, so I'm a trade reader for that one. So I just read it. I just finished it like 2 weeks ago or something. The most amazing action sequences. I mean, I love that we're getting that and genre right now.
Oh my God.
Two completely different like flavors of Samnee, but they're so good. John is so good. I love that book.
The most recent issue of Firepower has a 2-page action sequence where one of the characters fights a snake. And that doesn't sound like it would work, but it works really well because Chris Samnee is a genius. But okay, last question. We got to make this relatively quick. We've been doing this for 6 or 7 years. Does this feel like the most interesting, or at the very least, the most unusual time for these publishers since we started doing these superhero State of the Unions? Does it feel really, I don't want to say tenuous, but it kind of feels like everything's in a transition, right?
I think that it might be, honestly, because I mean, last year we were in such a weird space with pandemic that we didn't know. Everything was such a big question mark. And this year we're kind of seeing some answers to that question mark, and they're really interesting. Like, I mean, the fact that we were talking about this right after the Webtoon thing is that it was such a huge excitement, like, across just the internet blew up. I don't know what that really translates to in terms of other stuff, but like that shows so much promise. I'm curious about like how their YA and middle grade stuff does, because
I've heard not very well.
They put a lot of it, and I've heard similar things where they kind of cannibalize themselves, where it's like there's so much of it that, but at the same time, getting these books in libraries and stuff that can be hugely beneficial, and we might not see the benefits of that for some more years either.
I've heard basically the Kami Garcia, Gabriel Piccolo stuff does pretty well, but the rest of it is not as much. That's what I've heard.
So I mean, we'll see what happens, because if those don't sell, they're not going to keep putting them out. And I mean, I feel like that'd be a bummer, because I really like them, and I think they do a lot of really interesting stuff, and they hire a lot of really interesting creators for those books. But yeah, I'm excited. Marvel's in a really weird space right now, though, so don't really know what they're going to do. I mean, like, CB as editor-in-chief is, I don't know how that's faring, honestly. Like, do they need some new blood up top, like, to really just like reinvigorate and give the line some real direction? Because I don't know what's going on there right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's my larger issue with Marvel, and it kind of has been for the last few years, is it just feels kind of wayward. Like DC, I can see a direction there. Marvel, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, it's like I love Al Ewing. He's putting stuff out consistently that's always really, really interesting. But like, I don't know. And I mean, I feel like his books are all connected too, and those feel like they all have a direction that is tied in and they're going somewhere. But there's a bunch of other stuff too that is not necessarily connecting with me.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I always enjoy doing these things because it's such a fascinating world. It is always changing, even if a lot of it stays the same. But I always enjoy talking to you about superheroes, Oliver. So thank you so much for coming on to talk about, Marvel, DC, Webtoon, and this crazy world of superheroes. I appreciate you taking the time.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with comics critic Oliver Sava. You can find Oliver on Twitter at Oliver Sava. Love Off Panel and want to support it? Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts today and give the show a rating or review while you're at it, but 5 stars only. You can also support the show by backing it on Patreon. Find the show at patreon.com/offpanel, and when you back it on there, you get early access to each week's podcast as well as weekly content and more. Want even more? Subscribe to my subscription comic site Sketched at sketch.com for long-form articles, interviews, and the rest of the site's content, and its members-only forum. You can find Off Panel and Sketched on social media by liking on Facebook at /Sketched. That's SKTCHD. Follow on Twitter and Instagram at @SketchComic, or following me at @SliceFriedGold. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Raj Patel, Capes and Tights Podcast, Klaus Van de Ven, Brian, Submit Industries, Jack Mulqueen, Kyle, Carl Kerschel, Robert Masella, Elza Chartier, Luke Nakashoji, Elliot Metz, Dr. Luke, Scott Hazelwood, Scott Buon, Michael Tunk, Canadian by Proxy, Johnny Cannon, Bradley Rader, Carl Troy, Brandon DePillis, Patrick Brower, Declan Shalvey, Dan Garino, Josh Williamson, Adam Freeman, Ben Wild, Brian Klein Q, SB, Nick Bennett, Daniel Whitfield, Susanna Pollard, Reed Hinkley Barnes, Mario Tiambeg, AbductedTheComic.com, Andrew Carita, Matt Mahoney, Charlie Chu, Stephen Hall, Pensacola Pop Comics, Kim Eslin, Philip Myra, Christian Shelton, Kenny Porter, Chris Pacello, Torrin Grunbeck, Fuzz Bubbles, Christopher Todd, Transmitter Down, Waltz Comics and Books, Carl Mizell, Danny Ollie, Paul Salates, Akil Wilson, Alex Dimitriopoulos, Terry Dodson, Liana Kangas, Wesley Giff, Sean Kirkham, Alistair Ross, Julio Anta, Brett A. Schmidt, Jason Goodmanson, Paul Reinwant, Vita Ayala, Tara Ferguson, Dave Slusher, WQ Comics, Akil Kokachi, Sean Pinello, Ken Heidelman, Philip Seavey, Al Ewing, Ryan Alcock, David Kelly, Robert Wilson IV, Nick Polito, Brendan Fletcher, Jonathan Nilsson, Matthew Groom, Jason Massey, Adam Bogert, Matthew
Taylor, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Baraldi, Nick Hall, Bjorn Basin, John Hendricks, Steve Anderson, Ian Maxwell, Cliff Chang, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Adam Highfield, Fiona Staples, Mark Abnett, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim Demonakos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. A quick thanks to Upright T-Rex Music, who wrote and performed Odd Panel's theme song just for the show. Check out their music on Spotify because it's completely delightful. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.